I've actually been with Utah OSHA, the office, for it's 13 plus years now. I started there in the year 2000. My background before that, I actually spent about 9 years in the insurance industry, in commercial lines insurance. So that's why I got hired into the OSHA office. I spent 7.5 years in the OSHA compliance side of the office as a compliance officer. After that, I spend the rest of my time, and I'm still doing it, having a great time, in the consultation side of the office. Most people don't even realize that consultation exists. We're probably one of the best kept secrets in state government. Consultation is there to help employers become compliant with OSHA standards and help you learn about OSHA standards and understand OSHA standards and why they're the way they are before the compliance people come along and write a citation for one of several reasons. Compliance comes because, number one, they get a complaint from either an employee or somebody of the general public, and unfortunately they do a lot of this, they're investigating a serious injury, accident, or death. You don't want to meet them because of that. Sometimes they'll come into your place, and actually they're doing this right now. They have a emphasis program on to look at all the cities in the state of Utah. And when I say Utah OSHA, I mean Utah is a state plan. We are not federal OSHA, even though we've adopted federal OSHA standards with only a couple of exceptions. We are all state employees, and it's a state office, and it's run out of Salt Lake City. We cover the entire state out of Salt Lake. We spend a lot of time on the road. So with consultation, you have to ask consultation, you have to invite us in to come. We don't advertise, which is probably why nobody knows about us. And we don't show up just like the compliance guys do. So it's a free service, it's confidential. When we're working with you, we do not tell the compliance people that we're working with you. When we do a consultation service, it's confidential, as in it's between us and you guys. If you're getting a citation inspection, or excuse me, a compliance inspection, even if they don't issue a citation, that inspection is part of the public record. Anyone can, including you guys, can go on the federal OSHA website, osha.gov, and do an establishment search and look up any company. And you can actually look back to 1970, 71 when OSHA started and see if that company has ever had a citation or an inspection. Once the compliance guys come, it's a public record. So those are the advantages of working with consultation. It's free, it's confidential. I work with public sector, so I work with all of the public employer entities in Utah. There's 5 other people in the consultation side who work with private companies, specializing in small companies, which we consider under 250 employees. Well, that describes most of the companies in the state of Utah. So if you ever run across a company that needs help, refer them to the consultation side of the office, and we will certainly come and help them. That's what my job is. Okay, today I wanted you to talk about facility safety and how to be proactive on that. Rather than talking about little hints or tricks or maybe standards that you should be paying attention to as a facility person, you can do those kinds of things, but I'm here to tell you, if you don't have an overarching system to support those kinds of things, you might fix them the one time you go look at them, but then they will reappear. And that's true of safety and health. It's not, okay, we've arrived and things are hunky-dory forever. It doesn't work that way. I wish it did. But not with people. Humans will continue to do what they think is right or what they know is wrong and do it anyway. So I'm here to tell you that what you really need is a comprehensive program. So we're going to look at what the costs of injuries and illnesses really are. And this is true not just of private employers, but also of government entities. And it's true, a government entity does not usually have what's considered a product that you make, or sales, but you have some of the same budget issues that private companies do. So this applies to not just government entities, but also to private industry. This is the way life is. Okay, so what kind of costs do you have when you have injuries and illnesses in the workplace that you have to deal with? Well, there's the direct costs. Those are the things you can buy insurance or do other things to indemnify against. Then there's the indirect costs. Many of the indirect costs are totally hidden. And you don't even realize that these costs are a cost until you get into the middle of a situation. And then you find out, wow, there's a whole bunch of indirect costs that are adding to the situation. So I have listed the direct costs. Here you go. Workers' compensation can pay for direct costs. Property liability insurance can pay for direct costs. And it depends on what you do and how you do it, how much these direct costs are. So right off the bat, here's one thing you can influence for a direct cost. Okay, you all know what an experience modifier is. These things are what makes your particular workers' comp premium, how they figure it out. So if you have a less than 1 on your experience modifier, that's a great thing. It's wonderful because you're actually lower than your average for people in your business. So less than 1 is wonderful. 1 is average. Anything over 1, now you're paying more than the average in your industry for workers' comp costs. So there's one thing you can affect right there on how much of a direct cost will be. Okay, other things, things that are easily direct and indirectly associated with the event, not covered by insurance but can be planned for, those are other direct costs. And it depends on what the event is. Apparently this thing doesn't like mine. Okay. Anyway, it depends on what the event is and who you are, what those other things you could be planning for are. But here is a list, and this is not all-inclusive. There's other things I haven't thought of. Indirect costs. Okay, so wages paid to the injured workers for absences that may not be covered by workers' comp, and that might be overtime and things like that that you may end up paying. Wage costs associated with other workers. The other workers, when you have somebody injured or killed, you're going to have the other workers standing around going, oh my gosh, or they're the ones that are holding the pieces together while the EMTs get there, or they're the ones who are cleaning up the mess after they left. There's costs associated with other workers. Other employees, so psychological ability to work after the event. How many of you have ever been involved in a really serious work injury, accident, or death? Anybody? Okay, how did you and your coworkers feel after that event?
It was pretty disheartening.
What's that?
It was pretty disheartening. It was someone we worked with for years that he didn't die, but he was very seriously injured. In fact, we never saw him again.
And that's unfortunately one of the outcomes that's not unheard of when you have a serious injury. So right after the event, were you ready to go right back to work and do your best?
No, they made us.
Okay, do you think you did your best? Did you make no mistakes and did your best work?
Boy, I don't think so. I obviously didn't.
Okay, if you have people, especially people who've actually witnessed the event, somebody being seriously hurt or killed, you probably need to give that person some psychological help. Because one event can cause post-traumatic stress syndrome. And if that person is suffering from something like that, they're not going to come back to work anytime soon, doing their best job, not making mistakes, being part of the machinery that is, the government or the employer. They're just not mentally there. And even if they don't have something as bad as PTSD, people have nightmares, people don't sleep well. You know what it's like to try to work after you lost a bit of sleep or under some stress. This is a huge cost because things just don't go well after you have a serious injury, accident, or death. And it takes the whole workplace some time to recover from that. So that is a huge cost. Overtime paid due to the event or its aftermath. For instance, if you have that person that got injured is doing some key activity to your organization running well, and that person's suddenly taken out, you have to have other people fill in, but they have other jobs to do too. And in this day and age of budget cuts, everybody's doing more than usual and has plenty to do on their own. So, picture yourself taking on part of somebody else's job. You're going to end up with overtime and things like that. It just is fact of life. Administrative time costs. Anytime you have an event like that, you have people, administrators, secretaries, and everybody on down filling out paperwork and making sure it all goes through the system. So you have some administrative costs in accidents and injuries. See if we can get it to work. So here's some more. We've got 3 pages of this list, by the way. Training costs for replacing the person, either while they're out, if they're going to come back, or permanently. So you have a new person you hire. There's a lead time on getting them up to speed and doing that job as well as the person that is not there anymore. So there's a lot of training costs for replacing people. Cleanup and repair and replacement costs of damaged materials, equipment, buildings, stuff like that. There's time involved in doing that. Also, lost productivity related to work rescheduling, that you have to kind of shift people around maybe to cover shifts. New employee learning curves and accommodations for injured employees. If they are injured and they can come back to work, sometimes they can come back but they have work restrictions. So you need to work around that. And then there's the cost of OSHA fines. OSHA fines, if it's a serious injury or a death, you can almost guarantee they're going to come in and give you a serious citation. Now, in the public sector, if OSHA finds you or cites you serious citations, there's no cost related to that for another government entity. It would be like the government paying the government. You still get the citation, but you don't have the fine attached. And so, in your case, you wouldn't have the cost of OSHA fines because of that. However, there's time involved in working with the OSHA inspector. There's time involved, you may want to appeal the citation, and you have that right to do that, which means coming to Salt Lake and going through an appeal if that's what you want to do. And that's another cost. Also, I haven't been involved in any death that I've investigated that has not resulted in a third-party lawsuit of some kind. And thankfully, the compliance officers are exempt from testifying for these, or I would have spent the 7.5 years I was in the compliance side in court testifying about death citations. But the third-party liability suits can get into the millions. And governments sometimes can be exempt from that, but a lot of times they're not. So there's a huge cost. Also, worker pain and suffering. We hear it on the news. Okay, so-and-so got, one recently, some guy got his leg caught in an auger. Do you think that leg is ever going to function again like it used to? Probably not. If he manages to keep the leg, which an auger, I've investigated a couple of those, that can really screw up your limb, and a lot of times they're lucky if they save it at all. Well, if he manages to keep the leg, he's probably not going to be able to ever walk like he did. It's not going to move like it used to. He's never going to be the same. So, worker pain and suffering is a huge thing. It can lead to depression. It can lead to suicide. It can lead to family problems, divorce and all that kind of stuff. So all of that, unfortunately, people are not automatons that just come to work and do their job and then go home and they're separated from their life at work. Stuff happens that influences them at work, and that's one of them. Also, loss of goodwill from the bad publicity. This is more true, I think, of private employers, especially when you're talking brand names. However, with cities and counties, you can lose goodwill from the publicity too, to the point of having people either not moving, avoiding moving into your city or county, or leaving your city and county because they don't like the stuff that has been happening in that city or county. Also, it discourages good employees from coming and applying for positions, future positions. Okay, here's OSHA's ratio of indirect costs, and this has been proven over and over and over again. Even though this is actually from a study in 1982, I think that was the first time they studied this, they've restudied it and restudied it. A lot of insurance companies have over the years, and this has held true, absolutely. Nope, back with that. And the fact is, if you have a loss for injuries, for instance, if the injury costs from $0 to $3,000, you can expect indirect costs to be 4.5 times the total cost of that injury. And then it goes down to, if you have an injury that's $10,000 or more total cost, then it's 1.1. So how does that work? Okay, here's an example. A serious laceration, so that's a big cut. A national average direct cost is $17,368. An indirect cost, which is 1.1 times the direct cost on the last slide, is $19,104. So there's the total, $36,000. Now, if I were a company that made a 3% profit margin, which is pretty typical, I would have to sell $1,215,733 worth of product to recover the total cost of this one injury. And it takes a pretty good hit to the bottom line. Okay, so here is an example of a smaller direct cost injury. So maybe $1,500, a minor injury. It's pretty easy with medical costs to get to $1,500. Anyway, the indirect costs are going to be $6,750 with a total of $8,250. And if you have that same company with 3% profit margin, they have to sell $275,000 worth of product to cover this one injury. So you can see how it adds up quickly. And the thing is, the indirect costs are really hard to account for and very difficult to put into some sort of profit and loss bottom line type statement. A lot of companies have simply failed and they didn't know why, that had high injury rates. And it's because it eats up the bottom line. You can see with one injury how much that affects the bottom line. And if they had multiple injuries, they're pretty much is your whole year's profit. So that's why. Also, there have been multiple studies that have shown this statement to be true. For every dollar you spend on safety and health, you get $4 to $6 back in your bottom line. So why? Okay, the fact is good safety and health equals good business, a good place of employment. This good safety and health programs increase communication throughout the organization. And if anything in your organization is important, it's communication. Every organization has that problem. Do we have enough communication up and down the organizational structure? every organization. That hinges on whether they're successful or not. Well, a good program benefits that. Also, it increases employee job satisfaction. Employees who know that you genuinely care about their safety and health feel better about working there, just altogether. They're more loyal. They're more willing to go the extra effort to finish the job. They're more willing to do their best and make their best effort. Also, they've had studies that have found they have fewer sick days. Why do you suppose they have fewer sick days? Because of this. Anybody got an idea why that statistic? Mental health? That's a big one. You know, people can actually make themselves sick. And it's not that they're not sick. If you have enough stress in your life, it can manifest itself in a lower immunity to everything. So you catch every bug that comes along. So you're just sick all the time. It can also manifest itself to heart problems, to gastrointestinal problems. There's a lot of stuff that stress, just stress, can cause for people. And yet it's in their head, but it's not. And you know, a bad workplace is very stressful. A workplace that doesn't care about you is very stressful. A workplace where you have no control over how you're doing your job is very stressful. So that's one of the reasons why a good safety and health program results in fewer sick days, because people feel more empowered and they have less stress. Also, employees, and this has to do with the stress, can work without fear of unknown or perceived safety and health problems at their work. If you've done a good hazard assessment and you've talked about stuff, they're comfortable with it. Also, fear of reprisal. I can't count how many place of employment I have been in where the employees are scared to death to talk to somebody from OSHA. They're literally scared, stressed out. I've even met people at their home and parked my OSHA car around back so it wasn't seen. I did this in Cedar City on a case I was doing that was a whistleblower case. I've met people at libraries, you know. People are really stressed about talking about safety and health at their job. And I've been to some places of business who made the employees sign a statement that said, I will never talk to anybody about what goes on at my place of work, including OSHA. Okay, well, that's illegal for one thing. You can't do that. You cannot have people sign their rights away. It is their right to talk to OSHA. It's their right to talk to the police and the health department and all those things. So anyway, there's a lot of fear that goes on, and that really influences how people feel about the workplace. Okay, the safety and health program increases expertise through knowledge of business processes and safety and health factors associated with it. If you've got half your employees, you've got more long-time employees, and those people are going to be more expert at what they do, at what you do. You're going to attract and keep the good people. So one of the things that includes is hazard analysis that identifies problems before you have this serious injury, accident, or fatality. More loyalty among employees, longer employment. The organization conserves its memory. Also, like I said, expert employees not taken away from their work, efficiently working at their work from injuries and illnesses. Also, your customers are going to be happier. So your customers are the public that live in your area, right? I mean, we're talking customers like a private business, but government has customers too. And you want to keep those customers happy. So in order to do that, you want to keep your employees, and then will be more knowledgeable and better at their job and be able to put out a better work product. Also, a good safety and health program actually has been shown to increase productivity. And I think a lot of that's because you don't have your people worried about all those other things. So here's some examples. Here's a company in 1994 to 96, 2 years, only 2 years. Their workers' comp claims fell from over $500,000 to $91,000. This is a big company. But that's a huge drop in 2 years. And it's just because they put in a safety and health program and followed through with it. Also, here's another one. This one, Horizon Steel Erectors, I believe they're in the Midwest. After implementing 100% fall protection, in other words, anytime you're above 6 feet off the ground, you're tied off 100% of the time. And accountability and things, they had a 96% reduction in its accident cost and went from $4.26 to 18 cents per hour. So things can happen like that. Okay, so how do you get started if you don't have a good safety and health program? Well, number one, it's a journey. You're never going to arrive. It's a continuing, ongoing thing, and it's a change in culture. And believe me, I've worked with a lot of people and a lot of organizations where it's been a very difficult journey. Do any of you guys have your people on staff that say, well, we've been doing it that way for 30 years. I don't see why we should change now. Okay, you're laughing.
The best response to that is, you've been doing it wrong for 30 years?
Yeah. Okay, do we do things today differently than we did them 30 years ago? Stuff changes. There's almost nothing that we do in a workplace today that is exactly the same as we've done 30 years ago. Products change, methods change. I mean, God, 30 years ago, where were computers? You know, I remember we were so, it was so cool to have your own calculator. It basically did addition, subtraction, all those basic stuff. It did nothing else, and it cost like a couple $100 for that one huge calculator. And now, you can have a whole laptop on your phone. I mean, stuff changes, so why wouldn't the workplace change? But that is the source of a lot of inertia and a lot of resistance from people. This is what I'm talking about. You have to change the culture. You have to make those people realize that there's a safer way to do it, and they shouldn't be just putting up with hurting people. That's not acceptable. It's not okay to kill a person every 5 years in my job. It's just not okay. And there are some people, some places I run across, that's just assumed to be part of the thing. Yeah, you put yourself in this job, and so therefore, chances are you're going to die over your, whole time of working. That's ridiculous. It should never be that way. Okay, one of the other issues you're going to come up against, and here's that inertia thing again, the top. You have to have support from your top management and key supervisors, or this isn't going to work. I've seen people in those positions undermine safety and health programs extremely well. The top people have to be on board, and that can be the hardest fight of the entire program. Creating safety cultures, not the flavor of the month. It takes continued and consistent effort, and the management have to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. That means if you go into a place where you've told your employees they have to wear X personal protective equipment, whether it's steel-toed shoes or a hard hat or earplugs, then the management, when they enter that same place, darn well better be wearing those. Because they don't have some force field around them that protects them, just because they're management. And you see this a lot, where I'm just going to be in there a minute, I need to talk to so-and-so, I'll just pop in there and get back up. No. If you're going to go in that area, you should be wearing the same stuff you told them they needed. Also, safety and health is not an add-on out here somewhere. Well, we'll get around to that when we're finished doing our regular job. It has to be an integral part of your job and your activities, or it doesn't work. Also, it has to have funding. There are things with safety that cost money. You have to buy personal protective equipment. You have to do training, and that costs money, unless you get me to come down and help you, because when I do training, I'm free. However, you're still paying people to come to the training. It has to be in the budget. The written program also has to have a progressive discipline program that works. And you have to apply it evenly, because you don't want to have a lawsuit coming from discrimination and how you're treating people. But it has to be there. That's part of it. If you're not going to do the stuff by our standards, then we're going to try to help you learn, but if you won't learn, leave. And that's just how it's got to be. And that's really hard sometimes to tell people, you know, you've been a great employee for 25 years, but you refuse to get with the program, so now we don't need you anymore. But it's also proven that a very small percentage of employees are the ones that cost the most for injuries and illnesses and deaths. Okay, so here's some questions. How would you answer these at your workplace? Yes, no, or I don't know. Is safety and health an integral part of our operation? Okay, and when I say integral, I have it, right below the director, before the departments. It needs to be a priority. It needs to be given value by whoever's at the top, or it doesn't work. Is teamwork? Teamwork is apparent in all parts of our organization, and this can be very hard to do too. People get they get an ownership of their section and don't you touch it. Do you run into that at your workplace? This is mine, and I don't want anyone messing with my stuff. Well, safety has to cut through all that because it's got to be a give and take thing. You need to have teamwork through your whole organization. Okay, so managers and supervisors are out on the floor frequently and always observe the company's safety and health rules. This goes back to, are they wearing the personal protective equipment like they told the frontline people to? The managers have to be active in the program or it doesn't work. Employees are encouraged to identify safety and health hazards and correct them on their own. You need to give the employees that kind of responsibility and also that kind of autonomy to be able to do those things. If they see a hazard, they should be able to fix it.
There are some situations where it wouldn't be encouraged to do that, if it caused, like electrical or some other things like that, would be occurred.
Right. And in those kind of things, you should be able to, they should know, okay, this is bigger than I can handle. So I need to bring this to my supervisor's attention or whoever is, somebody that they feel comfortable talking to that can handle those issues and doing something about those issues. They should know they shouldn't just go blindly working on because they can't fix that problem. They need to bring those things up to people. How do you know about it if somebody doesn't bring them to your attention? Employees have full and open access to all the tools and equipment they need to do their jobs safely. So if you've gone through and done the job hazard analysis on all the jobs you do, and those analyses come up with, well, these guys need earplugs, and those guys need hard hats, and these guys need the high visibility vests, and maybe your electricians need fire rated clothing for arc flash. You've gone through and you've made all those, discovered all those things that people need. Are you supplying your people with those things you've discovered that they need? And there's a lot of companies that I run into, they know they need those things. Do they have those things? No. Because they don't have any money in their budget. In other words, it hasn't been included in the budget, a line item to be able to afford those things or to maintain those things. Okay, we bought all these things for the guys 5 years ago, And now they've been lost or worn out or various other reasons. But we don't have any money left to go rebuy them.
Some of the projects in planning jobs that we have here, they get more involved in what you first assess them to be. I replace carpeting in the dispatch center. It shouldn't have been a very big job.
Yeah.
Carpet layers coming in there, it's only 10-foot square piece of carpet, it's not gonna be a big job.
Sounds
But
straightforward.
It involved the information technology department for computers.
Right.
Computers got dust in them. Dust
And that's
in
not
the air. The dispatcher who has to sit there 24 hours,
Right,
they need masks.
right.
They need a bunch of people. The dispatcher happened to be pregnant, which is another thing.
Right.
When you put glue on the gown, she couldn't breathe the
And what
fumes.
kind of
You had
carpet?
to be
you
there,
put
this is
in?
gonna affect my baby, it just got so involved for
Does it
such a
emit
little-
formaldehyde?
Yeah, there are all kinds of other things that just, besides personal protective equipment of the contractor that came in. I wasn't aware, wouldn't bring that, but I didn't think with a 10-foot piece of carpet. They'd have to have all the PPE before we even got on this.
Right,
So it just got really involved with we need to look at that, and not always we do that, because we're so busy with other things.
yeah, and that can be part of your hazard assessment. What is really involved in the project you're trying to do? And I found hazard assessments are best done by a group of people with varying skills. And varying when I mean people from the guy that's going to be swinging the hammer to the administrator to people in between. If you get that group together and you say, okay, what could possibly go wrong or what hazards could possibly happen in this project, you're going to get better answers by a group of people than one person sitting down at a desk. Maybe it's your safety guy and you're assigning him to do this hazard assessment. You get better answers with a group when you're doing hazard assessments because you've got more brains working on it with more expertise. And so it's a good thing to have a hazard assessment before you even get started on projects to get these kinds of things possibly brought up. And stuff happens. And if stuff is happening you didn't plan on, then you need to maybe stand back and say, hey, let's regroup and reassess the hazards. So that's what I'm saying about safety and health, is it's a moving target. And it changes as life goes on. You're never going to arrive. There are people who've gotten close. I went to a place yesterday, it happens to be a sewage treatment plant, and they have got some great programs in place. And they've looked at the hazard. Well, one of the hazards they have at their sewage treatment plant is they offload big tanker cars of chlorine. I mean, thousands of pounds of chlorine. And they made the decision, okay, when we're offloading the chlorine, which happens, they said, I don't know, 6 or 7 times a year, they're putting people in full SCBAs and level A suits. And that way, even though they've never had an accident with that chlorine, that way, if they do have some sort of accident, they're already in the suit that applies and already ready to respond to it. They're not going to have somebody go down and then other people rushing in from outside and trying to figure out what to do next while all this chlorine is going all over and killing people. So those are the kinds of things, you know, if it can happen, it will someday. And one thing I like to tell people about OSHA codes, there's this book, I meant to bring mine because it's pretty thick, of OSHA codes. Use those as experiences from other people. Some of them are really bad experiences. There isn't a code in the book that wasn't written because somebody's had either serious injury or death accidents having to do with that particular code. Learn from other people's experiences so you don't have to go through that yourself. So that's one place, if you're looking at a hazard assessment, maybe you want to go see what the OSHA code has to say on that. Not saying the OSHA code's perfect. In fact, it's far from perfect. And there's a lot of it that's very old. It was written in 1970 or 71. Especially when you're talking about chemicals, I wouldn't go with the OSHA code for permissible exposure limits because it's so old, most of them. I would be going with either NIOSH or ACGIH. They have more current science behind their levels. As an example, OSHA says it's okay to expose somebody all day, every day at their workplace to 50 parts per million of carbon monoxide. Well, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that level of carbon monoxide. It gives me a headache. I could not work in a place with that level of CO. Well, if you look at the ACGIH and NIOSH levels, they have 25 as the all-day, everyday permissible exposure level for CO. And it's because we know more about CO than we did in 1971. And they have the more current science behind their number. If I'm a compliance officer, I can only enforce the 50. But you as an employer, you can say, we're not going to expose people to 50. We're going to set the level at 25. Because we want people in our workplace to be safe. And employers have that power. If you want to say, okay, everybody's going to wear a hard hat all the time, which a lot of construction companies tell people, OSHA doesn't say once you pass this gate, you have to have a hard hat on. You know, you see a construction site and there's usually a sign at the gate that says hard hat area. OSHA's not, our standard doesn't say that. Our standard is really vague. It says if there's a hazard or a chance of an overhead hazard, you have to be wearing head protection. And so most construction companies have said, well, you know what, that's silly. I'm not going to have guys going into the construction site and looking around, and the minute they come to an overhead hazard, then they're going to slap their hard hat on until that's gone, and then they're going to take it off and walk around some more. That's just dumb. What we're going to do is we're going to say, the minute you walk through the gate, we're going to require a hard hat, and that way they've got it anytime they need it. And those overhead hazards can happen in a split second. You don't have time to put the hat on sometimes. So they just made the decision, this is when we're going to put it on, and if you don't have your hard hat on at our site, you're going to be asked to leave. And that's okay. Employers can do that. They can set standards over and above OSHA's level. If you're OSHA compliant, you're just barely compliant. So keep that in mind. OSHA is, the standards we enforce are the basement. It's like a D letter grade or C. If you want to excel, go for the B or the A. And you as an employer can set those rules on your employees and enforce them. OSHA can also come in, and if you set those rules on your employees and don't enforce them, they can cite you for not enforcing your own rules, even if they're over and above OSHA standards. So keep that in mind. We'll go back to this. Okay, so we talked about safety culture. Everybody has kind of an idea of what culture is. It's the combination of all these things. We have a culture in Utah. You have a culture in Salt Lake County. It's different than the culture in Washington County. It's different than the culture, maybe out there in the basin. There's different cultures everywhere. Well, every employer has a culture, whether you like it or not. Your safety culture tells people, when they're new, how we are supposed to act here at our workplace. One way or the other, and it doesn't matter whether you're purposefully giving them this cue, they're going to get it subconsciously. It also defines who's got the influence in our workplace. Is this boss one of those that just says, okay, do this and this and this, and then they leave and everybody goes and does it their own way? That's a type of culture. So what is a good culture for safety and what's a bad one? A negative safety culture discourages or penalizes individuals from speaking up about hazards. And there's a lot of places I've been to that do just this. They say, just shut up and do your job. I don't want to hear about it. Reinforce misconceptions like these. The steel-toed shoes chop off your toes if something falls on them. That's a big misconception. Or, I don't want to wear a seatbelt because I might get stuck in the car. Well, better to be stuck in the car than thrown out of it and killed that way. I can't hear well enough with earplugs in. I do a lot of music I played a lot of music in my life ever since I was in college. And I've worn earplugs at some of those, and honestly, you can hear some things better with earplugs in than with them out. So that can be a problem. Also, negative safety culture says, just get it done. It's bottom line. Just get it done. I don't care what you do to get it done. Also promotes a macho attitude of, you know, those people who wear personal protective equipment are just wusses. You know, anybody that wears that, that's your culture. So a strong safety culture has positive attitudes in your workplace, has involvement and buy-in of all the members of the workforce from the top down, has mutual, meaningful, and measurable goals, policies and procedures that serve as a useful tool instead of obscure and obstructive rules. And I've seen a lot of those. Personal training at all levels within the organization to help them with the safety culture. And responsibility and accountability. That's really important. It's not my job. I don't have to worry about that. No, safety is everybody's job, even though that's kind of cliche. You hear it all the time. It's true. So, safety cultures, people in the organization, you know you're getting close to arriving. You'll never arrive, but you're getting close. If all the people in your place believe they have a right to a safe and healthy workplace, and this is actually a delineated right in Utah OSHA code and in federal OSHA code. It says right in the code that people have a right to a safe and healthy workplace. And they have a right to complain about safety and health concerns to you as the employer, to OSHA, to the police, to the fire department, to the health department, to their neighbor, to their family. They have a right to complain about safety and health. So hopefully your program makes it so they have a place to go with a complaint instead of to the neighbors and OSHA and, you know, all those things, but they still have that right. Also, each person in your organization accepts personal responsibility for their own health and safety. In other words, you don't have to have the safety guy standing there telling them, put on your hard hat. They wear it even when the safety guy's not there. That's them taking personal responsibility. Also, they need to believe that everybody has a duty to help their coworkers be safe and healthy. In other words, sticking their nose in a coworker's business and saying, yes, you need to be wearing your hard hat, or you need to buckle your seatbelt. These things have to be in your organization. So here's the safety program thing. Like I said, it's never finished. You evaluate your place. So this would be job hazard analysis. You make plans. What are we going to do about the hazards we've identified? You train your employees. Here's what the plan's going to be. This is how we're going to deal with them. You implement it, and then you evaluate it, measure it somehow, and then you go back to the top and make some more plans. Even if you have a really good safety program and you put it in place and it's working, you should still go back on a periodic basis and look at it again. I tell people with written safety programs, they should be looking at it at least every, depending on how long it's been in place, 1 to 3 years. You should be going through and totally reviewing your safety program, make sure it still applies to what you're doing and your people. What do you expect them to do? And how you expect them to work. So it's an ongoing circular system. So if you want to get started or improve your safety program, how do you do that? Well, federal OSHA has a really great toolkit on their OSHA website. And there's the complete address. You can go to OSHA.gov and find this, but it's such a huge site at OSHA.gov that some people, including me, get lost in it sometimes. So I gave you the whole address to working with your program. And it has this, I took this graphic right here, right off the OSHA website. And that really illustrates how things are interlocked in a safety and health program. So you can go there, you can call me, I'll come and help you. They have resources available through insurance companies. That's what I used to do in the insurance industry. So there's places you can go, and if you have any questions, you can certainly call and ask. On the beginning of this presentation, you have my email address and my phone number. And the phone number that I put on there, they took away our desk phones because we're not in the office that often anyway, and gave us cell phones. So what I have on the beginning of this presentation is my cell phone. If I don't answer, I'm driving, because I don't pick up my cell phone when I'm driving, or I'm with another employer. So if you give me a call, leave a message, I definitely return calls within a day, usually. I work Monday through Thursday, 10-hour days. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm probably not going to return the call until Monday. Anyway, that's how you get hold of me. And this is what I do. Part of my job is to help people evaluate their health and safety program or their workplace and make suggestions on how you can make it better and work with you on getting it better. So I'm pretty much done. I would like you to talk about, what did you tell me right before we started? I worked with Washington County a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years. Ellen came down and evaluated all of our county buildings with me, and it was kind of an empowering thing to me. It ended up being a great thing. There were places in the county that had like never been cleaned up and were kind of a mess that kind of gave me some credibility where I said, hey, you need to get this done and make it safe. And it's kind of continued in that. And it's just made for a much better workplace, you know, shelves are organized, we can find things, and it improved every building. There was no great cost.
Yeah, I think we went through, 25 buildings or something like that?
We went through probably
We went through
25
libraries,
buildings, yes.
we went through, I can't remember all the things we went through, but.
Yeah, we went through 25, I think we went through 25 because one of them we were going to move out, so it would have been 26. And, you know, including the jail, and I'm convinced that it's, that we have had a lot of less accidents, and it was just a very positive experience all the way through.
Well, I often have people, especially in your position, where you know about this. You've been telling them this for years. The guy I was talking to yesterday at this sewage treatment plant pointed out to me one of the problems they have. They have a place, it's about 10, 15 feet below ground, and it's this concrete, kind of a canal that's got turns and twists in it where they get the chlorine associated with water. And every once in a while, they, like an annual thing, they have to go down there and kind of squeegee the residue from sewer, the residue out of this channel. And one of the ways they were doing it, in fact, the way they've been doing it historically, he told me when he was working as an operator, this is before he even got in, to what he's doing now, 20-something years ago, they take one of their, they have an all-terrain forklift and use it like a crane, and they lift this, it looks like a riding lawnmower to me, with a blade on the front and a squeegee on the bottom of the blade. And they drive this thing down the channel to squeegee all this stuff to the end so they can clean it out. And he said, they've been putting that thing down in there, and they take a 4-gas meter with them because it's a confined space. It really is. And besides that, you've had sewer and chlorine, and there's all kinds of possibilities of icky things to breathe down there. So they have a 4-gas meter with them, and the thing they're driving is a gas-powered piece of equipment, and it emits carbon monoxide. And so they have a 4-gas meter down there, and they're driving, doing their thing, and the meter starts going off. Beep, beep, beep. Oh, it's just carbon monoxide, and the meter's set at like 35 parts per million. not up to 50 yet. It starts going off, and they keep working. And he said, could you write that up? That we need to do something about that. And I said, yes, you do need to do something about that. You should be training your people. Why do you have this meter with you if you're going to ignore it when it goes off? If that thing goes off, you should be getting out. And that's what he's been telling them. But he continued to do it this way. The meter's going off, and they're, driving along, and it's okay, as long as it's just carbon monoxide. That's just from the tractor thingy, lawnmower, whatever you want to call it, that they're driving. Okay, there's something wrong with that picture. There's an attitude, there's a culture issue that needs to change. And so sometimes when I've been out and worked with public employers, they will actually point things out to me that they want me to write up so that it brings this to the attention of the higher-ups, even though they've been saying it for years. Having it come from OSHA, maybe it gives them some leverage. And I'm happy to do that kind of thing if that's going to help you, if that's what you need. So that's my presentation. And any questions?
I got one. When you say it's synonymous, if you go there and think, how have these people not killed their entire workforce? You don't go back and talk to the investigator and say, you need to go look at that down here.
We are actually prohibited under the consultation program from talking to the compliance side. If you agree to let us come in, one of the things you agree right up front is if we find serious hazards, you agree to fix them. And not right at the moment. We work out a timeline, and sometimes stuff takes a lot of time. I'm working with a city in central Utah right now. It's 2 years now that they've had on their timeline to fix the problem. And the problem is they have some old grandstands next to a horse racing track that have some rickety parts that would definitely cause a fall or enhance a fall. And one of the things they're doing to try to get money to fix this is they have applied for and got a grant from UDOT. And this spring, they're going to rebuild most of that park. They're not going to tear down the grandstands, they're just going to fix them because they're historic buildings now, they're like 1800s. Anyway, that's all part of that rebuilding thing, and we're willing to work with them and say, hey, do you use these? No, we really don't use these anymore, but we want to keep them. Okay, if you're willing to make sure nobody goes on them until you fix them, we can certainly work with you. If it takes that long, it takes that long. Especially with public entities, where you guys have to go and ask somebody for a budget, and they gotta wait till, the budgeting time again. Sometimes it can take time. If there's some major repair you have to do. But a lot of the things that you need to do don't take much capital. And the only time we'd ever turn you over to the compliance side is if you refused to fix something we pointed out to you as a serious hazard. And in the 13-something years I've been in the office, I think that's happened to one employer once. That was it. So we really don't talk to the compliance guys. You might have seen some of the compliance guys recently, and they're telling you, go talk to Evelyn at the consultation group because you need her help. So I've got a few things coming up with public entities like that, specifically, where they're coming to me after they've been cited by the compliance side. And I don't mind that either, that's great. Whatever I can do to help, that's why I'm here. Any other questions?
If something is found and needs to be corrected, who goes back, or when do they go back and verify it's being corrected, if they ever do?
Most of the verifications, I accept your word that says you fixed it because you've told me how you fixed it and how you plan for it not to happen again. A lot of times, like I was, you know who DFCM is? That's the Utah State Department of Facilities and Construction Management. They own most of it, but they run all of the state of Utah buildings throughout the entire state. 2 years ago, I went through every one of those buildings all the way around the state, and we found a lot of hazards. And so what they've been doing is sending me pictures of the fixed problem, and that works great. And if you want, I can come out and look at it again. One advantage that you have working with me rather than caring about compliance, compliance officer, they can tell you what's wrong, they can't give you any direction on how to fix it. Because of the way they work, they can't do that, it gets them into legal trouble. On the consultation side, I can say, okay, I've seen this before in other places, and sometimes I can come up with pictures to show you what other people have done. I can make suggestions, okay, I've seen this, other people have done this, this, or this. So you can, use my expertise and experience to be able to figure out how to fix it. And some people have come up with some really imaginative ways. Great. All we care is it's fixed. So, hey.
All right, thanks everyone.
You guys all got one of these. This is your own self-test. Take it home, score yourself. At the on the back page, it gives you what your score, strongly agree, just all the numbers you can assign. So you can go through this test and figure out your score. And you can actually go on the website that I just showed, that's where this is from, and it'll tell you what that score means.